Greetings and salutations, friends. As the headphones quite clearly indicates, we are going to be watching a video together today, as I came across this video titled Your $70 Doesn't Buy You Cruelty, and I've got some strong opinions on this topic because I think it actually does buy you cruelty in regards to video games. If you are charged $70 for a product that is either blatantly false, shit, or broken, yeah, you do actually have a God-given right to be deeply upset about that. But perhaps I have misunderstood the thrust of the video, as I haven't watched this before, and in which case, you'll never see this, so hey, you'll never know. But enough waffling about, let's get into it. This is a previous BioWare head, I think, a director or something, fairly high up in the games market, so.
Did you read the title? Did it say something like, your $70 doesn't buy you cruelty? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about today. The fact that you bought a game that you didn't like doesn't give you the right to be cruel or unkind to the people that developed that game.
And there's kind of where we're getting to it immediately. Like, we start with, you can't be cruel, and then we go, you can't be unkind. There's a difference between these two statements. It's kind of like tickling someone or flattening their penis with a ball-peen hammer. It's a significant difference, in fact. And yes, no, this doesn't happen in a vacuum either, right? I didn't just give you $70 out of nowhere. I gave you $70 after a lengthy marketing campaign that you put together, after promises, after developer blogs, after reviews, after the dozens of things that video game companies do and use in order to try and sell their products. And yet I still then got a game that I was dissatisfied with, whether it was broken, buggy, shitty, or outright a lie compared to the marketing material, or try to salt away massive amounts of political nonsense, for example. And when that happens, my only actual recourse is to yell at you. That's it. Unless you were nice enough to make it clear that the game was going to be terrible within the first 2 hours, in which case I can refund it. But here's a big thing as well. The refund window for games. Now, if you buy virtually anything else, you've got a month to hand it back. If you pick up a game and it's bad, you've got 2 hours to figure that out, or your money is gone forever. So yeah, no, if anything, people have a right to be significantly angrier than they already are.
Now I'm going to be clear about something. I'm not saying that you have to like the thing you bought. I'm not saying even that you aren't allowed to complain about the thing you bought. You can have whatever opinion that you feel like towards a game. Even if that opinion is stupid and wrong, you are entitled to that opinion. And to some degree, you're entitled to express that opinion to the corporation, to the video game studio that created this game that you bought.
Aha, but let me guess, I do not have the right to express that opinion to the people who made the video game.
You paid 70 of your own dollars for this game and it disappointed you, and you're angry about that. That is fine. You are entitled to be angry about it, and you're entitled to express that anger in certain channels. If you are mad at that Ubisoft game, be mad at Ubisoft. Express your anger to Ubisoft or to the studio that made the game. But you cross a line when you start being cruel about it. So why am I saying you don't get to be cruel because you spent $70?
Well, that's the thing. When you be cruel about it? So this is, of course, a very broad judgment. You are being cruel. What do we define as cruel? Well, saying mean things, I guess, even within the balance of you can complain about it to Ubisoft. The thing is, that doesn't work. It actually unironically doesn't work. That's the problem. Reasoned feedback didn't work. That was what we started with. That was the beginning. To start with, it was simply just like, oh, they'll fix it in patches. Okay, this is what you should probably fix. discourse around video games being utterly broken was very, 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 very civil, especially in the old days of gaming. Look at titles like Black and White 1 or 2, for example. Games that had significant bugs on launch. Black and White 2 in particular wasn't even a finished video game, gosh darn it. And it still was received very well. Look at games like Skyrim or Morrowind or Oblivion, also rather buggy titles that were also well received. Now, this is because they also were qualitatively good underneath it, but again, the discourse around games was very, very civil. It was only after years and years and years and years and years and years of not being heard, of not having any feedback seemingly matter, that people started to go, alright, we're apparently not being loud enough, are we?
Let's walk through it. 1, you shouldn't be cruel at all. What are you doing? It's a video game.
It doesn't matter. Why are you caring about this thing that doesn't matter? Because it matters to me. Shut up and get out of my way. If it doesn't matter to you, that shouldn't be a problem, right?
Don't need to go out of your way to cause harm to other people
Nobody's causing harm to anyone. These are mean words on the internet. No damage is being done.
because of a video game that you don't like. Again, I'm not saying you're not allowed to be angry about it. I'm not saying you don't get to express your dissatisfaction with the content of the game that you're not enjoying. But when you climb into someone's personal social media and start actively attacking that person, when you celebrate layoffs at a studio because the game that you don't like didn't do that well, you're crossing a line into being cruel. And
I don't think so. Now, harassing people directly, sure. Nobody condones that. You shouldn't find these individuals themselves and openly attack them, for obvious reasons. Now, if they say something remarkably dumb on social media, a la, I don't know, a recent example, hey, people of color, send me your CVs and I will prioritize them over white artists, that is completely different. Yes, no, that person is making a fool out of himself and being obviously racist, as the lead art director of Avowed did. But when it comes to talking about the wider topic of it and talking on social media about it, yeah, no, that is entirely fine, and it is not cruel even. What's the other thing?
Because the game that you don't like didn't do that well, you're crossing a line into being cruel. And fundamentally, you should have more grace for other human beings.
But why? Clearly, these human beings didn't have any grace for me to begin with. Otherwise, they wouldn't release a poor product. And we're not even just talking about a bad game here, which can be subjective, but we're talking about obviously broken or poor quality products, which is, again, the big problem here. This idea of, people are attacking people simply because they didn't like a good game, I don't buy at all.
But if you're not buying that, let's go on to point 2. You don't know what caused the results that you don't like.
If you don't have the whole truth, you don't get to react based on the information you do have. Again, false. I will never be able to get the whole truth because I'm not your studio.
Let's go through an example. Let's say that you don't like the line delivery on a piece of dialogue. Is that the fault of the voice actor? It might be, but it could be a lot of other things too. It might be the fault of the person who was directing that voice actor. Maybe they were given very specific instructions to deliver the line in this particular way. Maybe the writer who wrote that line wanted it delivered in this particular way, and the stage direction specified this particular line delivery. Maybe the recording equipment at the voice studio went down, and the only take they managed to get was this first one that was done just to set the tone, and they were just kind of out of time and stuck with it.
Okay, all of which is simply the game's problem. It's, again, it could be a billion things. It could be the studio getting invaded by tiny little aliens, but none of that matters to me because I'm not there. I don't know these things, but I'm the one who get given the subpar final product for $70.
So if you go and you start attacking the voice actor for a line delivery you don't like, it might not be them at all. It might be something else. Indeed, it might not be the line delivery at all. Maybe the problem was the writing. So should you go attack the writer? Well, no, because why was the line written in this way? Was it written this way because the writer had a specific thing they were trying to say? Maybe. Maybe it was written this way because there was incredibly tight time pressures due to other externalities on their time.
Diffuse. Nobody's actually to blame, therefore you can't actually talk about it. Yeah, no, again, this is not my problem, it's the game's issue.
Maybe the direction of the game changed radically 3 months ago, and they had to rewrite this entire character in just 3 months, and you're just getting the first draft of that writing. Maybe the lead writer wanted this character to be in a specific way, and it constrained what the writer was able to do while they were writing this character. Maybe the creative director on the project had specific goals that they had in mind, and they were pushing the writing in a particular way, or restricting how much leeway the writers had in order to express their vision on what the game was able to do or be.
And none of this gets me my $70 back. None of this gets me my $70 back. We can argue decorum all you want, but at the end of the day, if you take somebody's $70, which is already a fairly massive amount of money, particularly in this economy, and then go, well, you can't complain about it. Why not? Because you might not who to complain to. Okay, who should I complain to? Well, I don't know. Well, tough.
The executive producer, all of these people reporting up into the executive producer, decided that this game should be different in tone and was pushing the game direction in a different way. Or maybe the leadership of this project changed 6 times and the direction changed 6 times, and you're getting little bits of writing from each of these different directions, and there was never adequate time to step back and rewrite it.
And maybe Santa Claus will come down my chimney and chide me for being mean to people on the internet. But up until that happens, I repeat the question, where is my $70? As that is kind of the crux here.
Maybe the CEO of the entire company really wanted his nephew to be hired as a script consultant. And this guy with literally 0 experience was coming in and pushing for mandatory changes to the project. How realistic are all the things I just said? Some of them are incredibly realistic. Some of them not so realistic, but I've seen things that look an awful lot like all of the things I just said. So when you decided to personally attack that one specific person on social media, how certain are you that it was their fault, that they are responsible for that thing that you don't like? And
I'm certain enough that my $70 are gone. That's all that remains. Again, nobody is asking anybody to go harass any specific individuals on social media over the game. It is better if you levy the complaint directly against the company at large, and in cases, specific parts of the department. The writing department, for example. We know very well what caused Dragon Age Veilguard to deviate from pretty much everything that ever made Dragon Age good, and it wasn't the voice actors.
I'm going to tell you right now, you shouldn't be certain, because you don't know exactly what was going on within the project. You don't know the exact circumstances that resulted in that thing you didn't like. Even people who were on the project aren't always going to be absolutely certain on who is responsible for something being exactly a particular way.
And yes, once again, the absence of absolute truth, of absolute certainty, does not change the fact I'm $70 poorer.
These projects have hundreds of people on them. Content moves around between multiple people. Unless I am the person who is actually responsible for something being a certain way, that chain of custody isn't always going to be super obvious to me.
But then, let us assume, as in the case of Dragon Age Veilguard, that we actually know who did the mess-up. Are you saying we are then entitled to go harass that person directly? Because I don't even think that's the case. I think we should, if anything, go again to the company and go, hey, your writing team is arse. Perhaps, as EA did with Dragon Age the Veilguard, you should consider booting them out the door.
And all of this isn't to say that you aren't allowed to have your own opinions, to not like the things you don't like.
You just need to shut up about it, because you don't have omnipotent God-given knowledge, and therefore your critique will never be perfect. And if your critique isn't perfect, well, I don't want to hear it.
It's specifically to point out that you being angry at a specific person, you attacking a specific person, is often misdirected.
Again, I don't even think this is happening very much, if at all, frankly. And again, when there are people making themselves actual targets via their own actions, like attacking the consumers, for example, or advocating your racist hiring policies, then that is very much so different.
You feel like you're just not getting the satisfaction from yelling at the corporate Twitter channel or yelling at the studio directly. If you feel like you need to focus it down onto an actual human being, I mean, that's really sad. I'm sorry. That's very sad. And hopefully you can grow beyond that. But I will give you a couple of outlets.
But doesn't this also come to cruelty then? When like, oh hey, I feel really sad for you. You're a very pathetic person. See, everybody does this. This is just how people vent. This is also how people get results when it comes to massive corporations.
If you need to complain at a human being, I'm going to say you don't get to go lower than the first person in the credits. You can go higher than that, but...
What an utterly arbitrary... Okay. The first person in the credits, alright? Is he the studio head, I guess? I don't know much about credits.
No lower than that. The first person in the credits is the person who was, theoretically at least, in charge of the project. They are the person where at least some of the responsibility is going to lie. Now, did they have full control over what was going on in the project? No, because you could still have the CEO of the company forcing them to use his stupid nephew as a script consultant. But
so again, we are making an arbitrary distinction where it goes, hey, you can harass this guy. Okay, why? Well, he's at the top of the credits. Okay. Well, if he makes a shit product, we'll argue that maybe he should be booted too, but if the writing is garbage, we'll just target the writing department. If the graphics is terrible, well, we'll target the graphics department. And by target, I simply mean point out to the company and everyone around that this part is the shitty part.
But at the very least, they were in charge of the project for a somewhat significant percentage of the time. So if you are mad about Anthem and we look at the credits, no shit, that's me. But yeah, if you feel like you need to yell at somebody for the way that Anthem is, it's much better to be yelling at someone like me, who was theoretically in charge of the project, or at least in charge of the project for some of the development time, than yelling at someone who was working on the combat or the level design or whatever.
But again, like, there's the problem though. You know certain things. Okay, for example, one of the biggest issues I had with Anthem was the ridiculous idea of limiting flight time. You are giving people Iron Man suits and then going, no, you can't use those to fly around. What's wrong with you? What? Or the general pacing of the combat, but again, you are wearing an Iron Man suit resplendent with rocket launchers, flamethrowers, and cannons, and yet the average grunt will blow you out of the sky in 5 seconds flat. There were parts of Anthem's combat that was actually really fun, when you were flying around feeling like a living arsenal, and that's what they should have actually lent into, rather than, no, this is a looter shooter and we kinda gotta, be able to kill you. Also, you can only fly if you hover near to the water, because we wouldn't want you to have too much fun.
Because again, you don't know exactly what their reality was. When I was an executive producer, I got paid pretty well. And to some degree, from my perspective, some of that compensation was to act as a lightning rod for this negative discourse. It's one of the reasons why I think it is an executive producer's responsibility to have a social media presence. Because some of you, if you're still watching, will play a game and be angry about it and need to yell at a human being. And I think one of the executive producer's responsibilities is to protect his team. And part of protecting his team is providing that lightning rod.
Hey, that's a fair enough point as well. If you have a lightning rod and you can have it be an active one, then sure. But again, nothing actually gets done. We are still missing the entire point of where did my $70 go? If the game had shit writing, then yelling at the executive producer isn't really going to achieve anything, is it? I need to be yelling at the writing team. Or at the very least, at the executive who owns the company to go, these people write garbage. Stop them, now.
If you don't provide that lightning rod, then people who need to vent are going to find places to vent. We live in a social media world. Many people have some form of social media presence. If you, as the most senior person on the project, don't have a social media presence, then people are going to go and find someone else. Someone who isn't paid as well as you. Someone who doesn't necessarily have the tools to protect themselves from the toxicity that is leveled at them.
Again, I really don't think this is a particularly widespread problem. Virtually every time I've seen somebody who's involved in a project's social media account, etc., it's pretty much just been like any other person's social media, except if they do something particularly idiotic and get called out for it.
I would say again that you shouldn't be targeting people directly, even the executive producer. But you know what? If you feel the need, the higher up in the organization you go, the more I'm going to say have at her. As you get beyond the executive producer and you get up into studio leadership and group leadership and the C-suite and the person in charge of the entire corporation, they share responsibility in the game you don't like being the way that it is. So if you feel the need to yell at them, again, probably don't, but they're big boys and girls, so they should be able to handle it.
But why can't the other people handle it then? Why are only the executives available as targets? I mean, I appreciate your willingness to throw yourself upon the sword here in a self-sacrificing manner, but why should we be going after the CEOs? Are they not human beings either? Is there something inherently more fragile about a programmer than a CEO? Could it be their class, for example, that allows one to be harassed but the other not? That delineates humanity?
The reality is, most of those people do not have a social media presence, do not have a way that you can yell at them directly. So a lot of times what I'm telling you is the least senior person you're allowed to yell at is the executive producer, and a lot of times the most senior person you're going to be able to yell at is the executive producer. So once again, the executive producer serves as a lightning rod for all this vitriol. If you feel like you're not being listened to when you complain on Metacritic or you complain on the forums of a studio, or you complain into the social media channels of the publisher or the studio, be aware that this stuff is carefully scrutinized, not just by the social media teams, also by the teams themselves. Arguably, in a lot of cases, to too great of a degree. The team is listening, I would say often, too much to what you are yelling about and complaining about in these channels. But
again, I don't think that is true either, because if it was, I do believe some changes would have been made earlier. In fact, we have a precise example of this, which I personally was quite close to, which was Dawn of War 3, where everyone was looking at the trailers and the teasers and the gameplay and going, I don't know about this. This doesn't look like Total War, or like Dawn of War at all. Like, what are you doing? Are you sure? Like, the pacing looks off, the maps look off, the graphics looks off, like, all of this looks off. And they were just, no, trust us. It'll totally be really good. And then 3 months after release, the game ended all public support.
Don't worry, you don't need to go onto their Twitter channel and yell at them directly, because they're going to hear it anyway. Be a human being, have some empathy, and stop being cruel. Stop throwing a party because a bunch of people lost their jobs.
No, you first. We were courteous to you. Then you started bending us over barrels and screwing us with your politics. I see no reason why we shouldn't return that exact same coin. Being kind didn't work. Getting loud, however, got results. It really is quite that simple. The polite approach, which was the base level entry point, that was the simple thing to do that went on for tens of years, didn't get results in the current year, and so people returned to vitriol instead, which proved to be vastly more successful.
Because you don't know the circumstances that resulted in the thing that you're mad at.
Nor do you know why people are mad at you, and yet you feel entirely entitled to lecture based on that. So this is a bit of a double-edged sword. You don't have perfect information, therefore you can't make an argument. Well, I think it's time to shut up then.
People deserve some grace, people deserve some empathy from you, and if you can't provide that, then stay off the internet completely.
People deserve whatever they actually deserve. If they make a good game, they deserve plaudits for it. If they make a shit game, well, they deserve shit too.
Last time for the cheap seats, you are entitled to your opinion. You are entitled to be angry about a game that you bought. You paid good money for it. But try to remember that it's just a game. Even more importantly, when you are expressing your complaints, stay away from cruelty, stay away from targeting individual people, stay away from trying to cause harm, stay away from celebrating harm done to actual human beings.
No, You are indeed entitled to be angry. You are indeed entitled even to celebrate when entire companies go belly up after refusing to listen to their audience. And we know you don't listen because the very games that do the things we want them to do become economic successes, whereas the games that don't do what we want them to do turn into flops. You can't really bamboozle us by making us doubt ourselves here. There's no room for gaslighting in this conversation anymore, saying, hey, we're totally doing the thing you want. We know you're not. We know why you're not. We understand all of this. We have enough knowledge to know when you're trying to screw us, and so we're going to be happy when you fail to screw us.
Express your opinion to the company that made your game. Tell them what you like, tell them what you don't like. Be specific. It will help you get games that are more like what you want. But when you are personally attacking individual devs...
And yet again, that didn't happen. When people asked nicely, they weren't given what they wanted. They were screwed. When they started yelling, that is when they received results.
You are crossing a line, and you're probably attacking the wrong person anyway. A special thanks to my members. They provide...
Alright, so that's at the end of all of this. So, this of course comes from a very much so a inside the industry perspective, right? Or somebody who has seen this in person and therefore empathizes with his side in the matter. This is something that we've seen quite a few times in other industry developers too. Obviously, their primary concern is for, well, they and themselves and their people. They know the programmers and the writers, and they go, well, you know, Billy over there's a really good person. He writes like shit, and he should never have been hired in this industry to begin with, but he's a really chill guy. He doesn't deserve to get fired off the Veilguard and I disagree. For me, the key point, it remains, where did my $70 go? Where did the $70 go? Unless that question is actually answered, which the only way it does get answered is by murdering the company, it seems, and burning it to the ground only for another company to step up and then give us what people actually want for those $70, well, that's the thing. So long as this tactic works, and it does, then you can't really fault people for utilizing it. If people want better games and they tried asking for it, which is what they did, and they received shit, then they yelled at the company, and indeed many of the people who they saw as directly responsible, and they received improvement, well... It really is as simple as if one thing works and the other doesn't, guess what people are going to go for? And yes, no, people are in fact entitled to be upset about something they spent $70 purchasing. Now, perhaps there may even be instances in which that ire is genuinely misdirected. Possibly. In which case, shit. It happens. But this is the internet. If you have a social media profile, you're going to have to be able to understand that it is a social media profile, and people are going to yell at you. If I kept a record of the number of times people had told me to kill myself, I would have a very, very long piece of paper at this point. And yet, it doesn't really affect me, because it's people on the internet. If you can't handle the fire, don't play the game. Everybody has tried being nice, and it didn't work. And at this point, you could simply not have a social media account and therefore avoid it, like the CEOs that you say it's okay to target, for example, or you're just gonna have to suck it up. Sometimes there's going to be misfires, absolutely. Is it unfortunate? Sure. Should people go after individuals and harass them? Absolutely not, obviously. They should be slinging their shit at the company as widely as possible. But again, if somebody directly fucks up, if the reason why a game is bad is because of the graphics, or because of the voice acting, or because of the writing, then no, that is indeed the department that must and should be targeted. That is actually the direct, detailed feedback, the best that the hive mind that is the internet can produce is. That is the feedback, as you never listened to any of the other feedback, provably so, no matter what you claim to have done there. Anywho, I'll wrap that up there, as this is one of those things that just kind of annoy me, honestly, because it's all of one perspective of, well, Bob's a nice guy, and none of, yeah, but he butchered a decade-old setting that a lot of people were genuinely invested in, especially when the argument simply is, oh bro, it's just a video game. Who cares if you paid $70? Who cares if you had your childhood literally ripped apart and ruined because you were a massive fan of this series? Bob is upset. Tough luck for Bob, I guess. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.